Oh, thank you. Kathy had it, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. I won't lose that one. Okay. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. I'll call the work session to order. And I would like to turn our attention to SB 401. I think this should go relatively easily since we are just we're just looking at the amendment which replaces everything other than the opening statement, which is where the money is appropriated. So I think we've had plenty of discussion on these bridges and roads and dash cams and anything else that that would cause an issue. So if I could, I would like to have a motion to accept amendment 2022-1844H.
Move.
Thank you. Oops, we need somebody to.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Excuse us, two of our members are in the redistricting committee meeting, so I can't believe they thought that was more important. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Because they are also execing their things today. Okay, so I have a motion by Representative Petrie and a second by Representative Heath. Is there any discussion? No? Seeing none? Will the clerk call the roll, please? Oh, wait, we're just accepting the amendment.
Yeah, just.
Okay.
Just raise your hand.
All in favor of the amendment? Thank you. Okay, now, I need an OTPA on SB 401.
So move.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Representative Heath. Now you can call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Petrie votes yes. Representative Bucco,
Yes.
Representative Heath,
Yes.
Representative Murray,
Yes.
and Representative Umberger.
Yes.
Chair, the vote is 5-0 on motion on offer pass as amended on SB 401.
Okay, thank you very much. And I appreciate all the work that DOT has put into this and all of the work that our budget analyst, Mickey Landrigan, has put into this. And I think we've got a better bill. And I think that we'll have happier constituents out there in the road and bridge area. So thank you very much. Okay. Now we turn to 381, SB 381, dealing with the child advocate. And there we go. We did have a reconsideration motion yesterday. The current status of this is ITL 6-1. And the reason that the vote was this way is because, in our opinion, we had two offices trying to accomplish the same thing. And that's not something I could allow to happen. So, if I understand correctly, Senator Reagan has whoever they are, Legislative Office Services, OLS, yeah, thanks, is in the process of drafting an amendment. And so would you come forward and tell us what you're doing? I did pass out a copy of the RSA that deals with this. So if you would, Senator Reagan.
Good morning, Madam Chair and
Good
members of House Finance. The objection rightfully objected to two agencies being tasked with oversight of education purposes. So the amendment will remove the two references in the Office of the Child Advocate to education and education records. And also, as there was an oversight as to who the appointing authority was, and it was added into the amendment that the appointment will be by the governor with the approval of the council.
Okay. And just so everyone knows, that the first reference is 21V:2C, if you want. My copy has yellow on it, but the yellow didn't copy. And the other reference is in 21V:4A. So we will see this amendment in our exec session.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, if I appreciate it. Thank you.
Glad to be of service.
Okay. You can stay there or not, but I think we're finished. Are there any questions that anybody has for Senator Reagan? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as far as any fiscal note for this particular bill, it's still the same, appropriating $500,000 to get this office up and running?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Representative Heath?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Will this advocate for special education now be housed under the advocate's office, child advocate's office? It will remain separate?
It will remain separate in a separate location. Department of Administrative Services appreciates what a conflict it would be. So, and once this is signed off, they have office space for us.
Thank you.
Representative Petrie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. As far as privacy, now, is it up to the parents whether the advocate gets involved? In other words, access to the records and whatever, or?
The record of special education that is awaiting a performance audit now is by testimony, it was just so dismal that I expect the advocate to be advocating actively with the school districts who are denying services for specious reasons.
So they'll be basically able to subpoena, if you want to use the word.
Yes.
In other words, and now the parents, with the parents' permission, or how does that?
Now they're there to see to the special education needs of
Okay.
children.
Okay, so if they see a problem, then, or if a
Or if a
broad-
problem is reported.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. And I'd like to ask the Office of Child Advocacy if you'd come forward. I'm sorry, I have not met you before.
Good morning.
Good
Cassandra
morning.
Sanchez, child advocate.
What, first name?
Cassandra
Cassandra.
Sanchez.
Okay,
Pleasure to meet you.
well,
Thank you for having me here.
welcome, welcome to the Office of Child Advocacy.
Thank you.
And it's a interesting office. So, I know that in your testimony that you had indicated, or your, whether it was you or someone else, had indicated that the Child Advocacy Office was charged with this special education problem.
We do have jurisdiction over education as well, correct? Yes,
Okay.
and that was updated in December 2020.
Okay. So does your office have any great problem if we remove that from your office?
Yes, we do. The main issue with that is that we do serve children in all aspects. And I know that there has been discussion around us specifically working with children involved in the juvenile justice system, involved with DCYF, which, yes, that is one aspect of what we do, and an important aspect of ensuring all children across the state are serviced appropriately. We do need to be able to have access to their education records as well. That is part of the whole child, and we look at the holistic view of the child.
So these two offices could certainly work together.
They could. I think there's a lot of concern around that in the current office. For myself specifically, it is confusing already, the systems that are in place in regards to education for families, and to navigate a system where we could be working in one respect and another office could be potentially duplicating that, or working in a different respect in regards to the same family can be quite confusing. So we'd like to reduce that if possible. We do feel that having the specialty within the office could serve the need and meet the needs of the families. We are at no point denying that there is a need for a special education advocate and there is a need for the specialty within our office, but we do feel it's best served communication wise and to be a clear office under one roof.
Okay. Are there any questions from anybody else? Representative Heath?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you are advocating that the special education advocate be housed and work in conjunction with your office?
Yes, so we have responded to the bill that we are in support to a degree, but we are not in support of this being a separate office. So we have provided a financial write-up of what it would cost to add this role to our office versus the financial note of having a separate independent office.
Right, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I do have a couple of just follow-up questions that
Yes.
if I understand what I'm hearing from many people about your office, they don't believe, right, wrong, or indifferent, that your office has been successful in resolving problems that families have. And is it because of what you're tasked with? Is it because you're overwhelmed? Or is it some other reason?
I think that's a complex question.
Oh, yes, I know.
Absolutely.
I know.
And so I think there's a couple of answers to that. I think we've been clear that when it comes specifically to special education, we don't have the resources in the office to meet that need right now. So that is a big piece of it, is having the resources available within the office. I think as well, a piece of this bill that I've been concerned about all along is, what is the expectation? What do families truly believe the advocate can do? We do not have authority to override IEP decisions. We do have the ability to educate families, to help them work through the process, to make sure that they understand the process and are taking the steps necessary to be able to meet their child's needs. But by no way is this advocate position, even if it is an independent office, is this position going to be attending IEP meetings with every single family? Are they going to be overriding decisions that are being made? So my concern is that families are believing that that is what's going to happen with this bill, and our office does not have the ability to do that. We can make recommendations to school systems, to the Department of Education, on better ways to manage some issues when we have specific complaints about a family. We can do a deeper investigation into where the system failed that family and make those recommendations. But no office of special education advocate or of the child advocate has the authority to override decisions that are made by the other departments.
Okay. I'm thinking. I don't want to say something that's wrong. I guess from my perspective, at this point, that I would prefer to not put this advocate into your office. If we find within the next couple of years that we're having problems with this, the two offices not being able to work together, or you find that it isn't working, or whoever is appointed the advocate isn't working, then I think that we could legislatively certainly go back and relook at this issue. The Special Education Committee or special education people are, I don't even know what word to use, are totally opposed, if that's the right term, to this office going into your office at this time. I mean, it's like, I don't know how many emails I've received, or comments, or attacks in the hall, or whatever else. But from my perspective, I think that it's probably the best thing to do right now is to set up a separate office, and we'll work to make sure that whoever is appointed understands that one of their responsibilities is working with you, because that is, I think that's very, very important. You cannot do your job, or your advocacy, I guess is what that is. I don't like advocates, but that's okay. That's just me. But that's sort of where I'm coming from. So. Representative Bucco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question in regards to this performance audit. Excuse me. Is there a performance audit going on now? And if so, when will it going to be completed?
It has not begun.
Oh.
It will be brought to fiscal this month, or May 15th, May, whatever the date is, for approval.
Thank you, thank you.
Representative Heath?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I disagree with you, respectfully. I
That's
believe.
quite all right.
I just, special ed is fraught with difficulties. I used to be a special ed teacher, special ed administrator, worked at the Department of Education, and before I was deputy commissioner, I had special ed was my field. It's a personal situation. It's hard and difficult. Your office, I applaud because you're new to your role, first of all. So I back away from casting any judgment on your office because you're new. And I believe that the former advocate knew she needed extra help. And for me, the special ed advocate would be a wonderful asset in your office because so many of the issues are STEM in special education. So my feeling is that I would like to see work together and come up with a great plan of how to work better with school districts and the Department of Ed, because there's a lot going on in special ed. There are a lot of new changes. There are a lot of new laws. The funding is at the local level is always difficult. And I would feel better with one office working together to address these issues. I just think it would be a coordinated effort and more powerful. That's my feeling.
Thank you.
That's fine. For the two reps that just came in, I just wanted to let you know that 401 amendment passed. And Senator Reagan has an amendment that is currently being provided at OLS, or written at OLS. And it involves 21V4, which you have there, and A. It's on the third page, right there. Yeah. 21V4. Yeah, and, I'm sorry, and 21V2. And that is to take education responsibilities out of the child advocate office. Okay? And that's where we are. I'm sorry, Cassandra Sanchez?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Cassandra Sanchez is currently the appointed child advocate. She's taken over, what, 2 months ago? A month ago?
2.5 weeks ago,
Oh,
to be exact.
Brand new.
2.5 weeks ago. Okay. The special education people do not want the special education advocate in this office for a variety of reasons. And Ms. Sanchez is here now talking about why it should remain within the Office of Child Advocate. So that's, I think, where we are. Okay, and yeah, And I know that we won't be able to vote on this because we don't have the amendments. But I just want to make sure that we have a good airing and understanding of the two sides of this issue. Because it's important.
Just a quick question. I'm assuming this hearing just got underway and Ms. Sanchez was your first to testify?
No, Senator Reagan introduced what he was going to
Okay,
put in the,
but I assume we will be hearing from other individuals.
well, I
Thank you.
don't know. You know, I don't, you know, the issue is whether the issue was that I had two offices that, okay, and so what this does is what the amendment will do is take that responsibility away from child advocate and put it into the special ed thing. So that allows for two offices. And Ms. Sanchez is arguing against that. And that's, certainly.
If I may, I'm just happy we're doing the advocate because I think we need to do that. And I'm not going to get stuck on one office or another. If somehow within the amendment we could get in coordination so that we know there is that you folks will be working together. My preference would be the one office because I think advocate says a lot. But certainly I can live with either way. I think the important thing is the advocate position, and I'm happy to support that. So I am flexible in my inflexibility thinking.
I am also flexible in my position. Are there any other questions? Yes, Representative Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just trying really hard to suss out, the right thing to do. And there are just things in my head that I guess I'd like to put out there for other discussion or to people to help me to understand. The first is Ms. Sanchez is new in this, and so it's hard to predict what that office is going to look like going forward. And some of the issues that occurred in the previous situation may not pertain. So there's part of me that would like to see more coordination with the two, and there's some sense in my head that this would fit well under there. But again, with Ms. Sanchez being new to the position, we don't know what that's going to look like. I also look back, our first suggestion was to put it to interim study, which we said no. And then we moved to ITL the whole thing. And now we're back to passing the whole thing. And I'm just feeling a little lost and a little bewildered about how we've gone from interim study to ITL to now this should be a good thing and where should it lay?
Well, the ITL was because we had two offices. Okay, that we're trying to do the same thing. That was what the ITL was all about.
So I'm to understand that with the amendment, pulling education out of the child advocate's office and special ed becoming a separate, because it seems to me, I can be fine with that, but it seems to me that part of advocacy with children kind of involves education. So I have a hard time understanding the limit of the child advocacy office if that office doesn't have to do with education. That kind of limits significantly what they would be doing. Maybe Ms. Sanchez can speak a little bit to that, but I feel it's a little confusing to me that would have a child advocate office that does not deal with education.
Go ahead.
Yes, so that is a main concern of mine. We do treat, as I mentioned prior, we do treat the holistic view of the child, which encompasses their education, their leisure activities, their mental health, their physical health. So as of right now, in the purpose of the extension of our jurisdiction in December 2020 was for that very purpose, because we saw those limitations and we had those limitations, and we were not able to treat the whole child and to help advocate for the whole child when those limitations were set. So it would be highly concerning that we would not have the ability to access necessary records for children. And I had mentioned that there is an understanding that our scope covers children in DCYF custody, children involved with the DCYF system, children involved in juvenile justice. But I have understood, yes, I've only been here for 2.5 weeks. And in my 2.5 weeks, the first thing that has jumped out at me is the fact that there is a lot of education to be done on what our office can and should be doing. I absolutely have it in my agenda to be able to reach out to school districts, to connect with them, to connect with the Department of Education as one of the primary roles is stepping in. I understand that that has not been built up yet, and that relationship is extremely important to be able to do the work. That we know is a limitation of our office, that was highlighted during the strategic planning within our office, and that was something that was asked of me coming in if I was willing to take on, and I would like to have the opportunity to take that on. And I do believe that it will be setting back our entire office and the work that how far they have come. We've only been here for 4 years, and there has a lot of work that has been done within those 4 years, and this will greatly set us back on that work.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
could someone speak to the other side of that?
certainly. Who wants to talk? Okay, Senator Reagan,
In the creation of
come up to the mic.
Do you have any further questions for me?
Oh, just don't leave.
Okay, I will not then.
We'll be back with you.
In the creation of SB 381, mention was made of the Office of the Child Advocate, and testimony proved that that was not something that they did, that they were active in or had any successes in. And so we never thought about it in the same area until at a later hearing, all of a sudden appears the OCA to say, well, we already do this, when we already knew they didn't. So that's the reason why, and every reasoned person who has reviewed this has agreed that this should be in a separate place with this, it has a separate purpose. So the Office of the Child Advocate was created because of children that were in danger, and we thought this was a way to mitigate the problems with children who are in danger. The special education is a whole other world. It's a whole different area of service to children. They're not the same because they both say advocate. They're entirely separate areas. And I can understand that it became obvious that the Office of the Child Advocate was eager to get their hands on the money proposed in the Special Education Advocate and add positions. But that's just, in a management term, it's empire building. So they're not in any conflict, and I don't believe there's anything lost by them each doing their separate missions, and they should go about doing what they were intended to do, and we expect that the Special Education Advocate will delve deeper into the problems that we have with special education. So I don't have the binder with me now, but there's a 4-inch binder at the Performance Audit and Oversight Committee with testimony. And like I say, in that whole 4-inch binder, and it's full of testimony, there's not a happy story in the whole thing. So the Child Advocate, had they wanted to get into education, had the opportunity to do it, they just didn't do it.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you, Senator Oh, yes, you may.
Thank you. Just to make it a little more confusing, in the beginning of this bill here, it says that the advocate will be attached to the Department of Administrative Services.
Right. That was an attempt at neutrality.
Thank you.
And that's not an unusual thing. As a matter of fact, the Office of Child Advocate is also attached to DAS. Okay, so and that seems to be the place where they attach them. They really have no responsibility for them other than to find a place for them to
Landlord's agent.
work out of. Shirley.
So, Senator, thank you for taking my question. I guess that I want to make sure that I'm understanding your position. If I understand it, the you agree that there should be an advocate for special education, but it should not fall within the jurisdiction of the RSA 21V.
Right.
But that advocate for special education should also be housed in the Department of Administrative Services?
It's wherever DAS can find office space. That's
Okay. So, okay. So I guess if I can, may I ask a follow-up? So I guess I'm sorry.
You already are.
So I guess I'm just wondering, I mean, if logically, it would seem since one is in the Office of Administrative Services, for neutrality reasons, as you say, which may make sense,
Right.
the Office of the the Special Education Advocate should be in Administrative Services. And I'm just wondering if we have both of them in there, wouldn't it be more efficient, really, to just have one office doing, doing both
Let me just make a comment, okay? When it says it's assigned to DAS, it's only for administrative purposes. In other words, it's finding them a room, getting them a telephone. They may be located in transportation because that's who has the space, or safety, or someplace else.
they won't share an office.
Yeah, they won't
They won't.
share an office at all.
So,
Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, but I mean, if I guess if somebody isn't doing, whether it's in the office of the 21V child advocate or the special education child advocate, who's their supervisor? Who decides, if they're doing their job or not doing their job?
The governor.
So the governor is the supervisor of both of them.
In the end, he's
All right.
he's the supervisor of all the executive agencies.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sanchez, I believe Representative Turcott has a couple of questions for you.
And if I may, I would like to address the supervision as well, if that's possible. So we have an Oversight Commission that works to oversee and to ensure that we are meeting our mandate. So ultimately, yes, the governor appoints the position, but there is a separate Oversight Commission that is in place to ensure we are meeting our mandate. And so my guess, if this was created as a new office, there would need to be a new Oversight Commission for that office as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Turcott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for taking the question. I know you're fairly new in the position, but could you either elaborate or repeat the comments you made about, sounded to me like you were admitting that the current Office of the Child Advocate has been falling short on what you're supposed to be doing. Did I hear that correctly?
So if I can start from the beginning. So we received this new jurisdiction in December 2020. Within that time frame, we were also within the strategic planning process. So the prior child advocate, along with the Oversight Commission and outside stakeholders, went through the strategic planning process to see what pieces of the mandate they were meeting, what they would like for goals for the future. and what parts of the mandate they were not meeting. The pieces of the mandate that they were not meeting were in regards to this newer jurisdiction. But the office had existed without that jurisdiction for some time. So the focus was really at that point, unfortunately, in the middle of a pandemic, was developing this aspect of the jurisdiction, which includes special education. So it was understood at that time of strategic planning, which it is now, that that was a shortcoming of the office, that was an area of focus for the future of the office to build that up, since that had not been achieved thus far by the office. So I inherited the office with that being a primary goal, to build the relationships with the Department of Education, to outreach communities, school districts, superintendents' offices, so that families understood this role in our jurisdiction. Because that was the other missing piece, was that families were not aware that we had oversight on education, that we could assist with special education. So it's getting out, informing the public, informing the community, meeting with families, and ensuring that they know they can call our office, file a complaint, and we will look into whether the Department of Education is meeting their guidelines for this family, and then to be able to follow up with the Department of Education and, through relationship building, make recommendations for them to make improvements on behalf of these families. And that is something that I have taken on and am very willing to do with this office as I'm newly inheriting it.
Thank you,
Go
Madam Chair. So if this new Office of the Advocate for Special Education, would you be able to accomplish that with current staffing, or would that require you adding additional staff and whatever?
Yeah, so that was something else that was found within the strategic planning, was that the resources in the office do not have the specialty for special education. So we would be looking to add to the office, which is what we provided in a letter that I sent you, which would be the finance for adding the position to the office. And we would look to add specifically a staff member with special education law background, because that in itself, we have learned throughout the community that special education law is very convoluted, and it takes a specialty to understand parents' rights within that. So we would be looking to add that, as well as a support staff for that special education advocate who has that law background. Yes.
Are there any further questions for Ms. Sanchez? Okay. Is there, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, just don't go too far.
I will.
All right. We really enjoy meeting you this morning, and
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
probably wouldn't have the opportunity if this bill wasn't here. Representative Cordelli, we're going to focus on what we're focusing on.
Most definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Glenn Cordelli, representing Tufton Borough, Moulton Borough, and Sandwich in the beautiful Lakes region. First of all, I think it would be bad policy to mix special education services in with an office that is, I'll say, centered on DCYF and juvenile justice. Secondly, we've heard discussion about jurisdiction, and I'd point you to the Office of Child Advocate 21V section. And if you look at the definitions, agency means any department, institution, bureau, or office of the state. Child or youth talks about a custody or receiving services from the division. Division is defined as the Department of Health and Human Services or the Division of Children, Youth, and Families. There's no magic, you can argue about whether there is jurisdiction over the Department of Education. And I think that the Attorney General has said that they do in my discussions with the lawyer for the Department of Education. But I'd point out that the Department of Education provides no direct services to children. It's all done at the local level. Local school districts provide those services, those special education services. So I see nowhere in here that the Office of the Child Advocate would have the ability or the authority to go into the local school district level. Their responsibility is at the state department level. So in terms of jurisdiction, I think that there would be no jurisdiction for the current Office of the Child Advocate to get into the area of special needs services provided by a local school district.
Are there any questions? Representative Turcotte?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Cordelli, for taking the question. You were in the room when Ms. Sanchez just talked about this would require, for lack of a better word, specialists to handle because it's so much different. Do you agree that there's a large difference between the Office of the Child Advocacy and what this bill is proposing?
Yes, I would. And I think Representative Heath previously mentioned that special education services is a unique and difficult area and certainly requires specialized knowledge and information about both federal and state law. And the child advocate has said they do not have that expertise right now in their office and would have to hire staff with that knowledge.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the additional question. So would it be your position that having the two separate, I don't want to call them departments, but whatever it would be called, the two different advocacy groups, since money would have to be spent either way to develop this new department, whether or not it's placed under here or as its own in a department that's more specialized for the purpose, if the money's going to be required either way, is it your position that it's better to segregate it into its own department?
Most definitely, I think definitely it needs to be its own separate office. And within the office, under the jurisdiction of the Department of Administrative Services, who it is my understanding would provide services such as payroll and things like that. Would come from Department of Administrative Services. That's why these types of offices are placed there.
Thank you, Representative.
Okay, is there anyone else that wants to talk about this? Representative Heath? Or you had a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Special education has a process, and if a complaint is filed at the Department of Ed, there's a number of things that can happen, and it rises to various levels. Where in that interaction would you see the special education advocate becoming involved?
The 381 provides certain duties for the proposed new office, similar in many regards to the responsibilities in the current child advocate office in terms of receiving complaints and investigation and so forth. I would see that the Office of Advocate for Special Needs would work with the department if they found problems and so forth. Just like the Office of Child Advocate, they wouldn't have no ability to overturn the findings of an IEP team at the local district level, but would be able to look and see if there are patterns of problems, be it at the district level or throughout the state amongst districts, as to problems in the processes and recommend solutions. And I think the outline of functionality for the office is a starting place, and we can see as the office develops, what revisions may be required and other functionality added to the office to ensure that parents' needs are being met.
Just to follow up,
Certainly.
in relation to the mandates that come from IDEA and our own state plan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would definitely see that they would be always up to date on changes to IDEA or any federal or state law.
Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Cordelli.
Thank you.
Mhm. Is there anyone else that wants to say something? Yes, please come forward. Remember,
Thank you for hearing me. Kate Shea from Goffstown.
Okay.
So who am I? I'm an advocate, volunteer advocate in the state for kids with autism, kids with special needs. I have 4 children of my own. And I will
okay,
very proudly,
remember, we are talking only about,
381.
no,
Right.
no. Whether this office should be separate or it should be under the
Sure,
child advocate.
sure.
Okay.
Okay.
We don't, I mean, I know you have a story and that's wonderful, but
Well,
that's not what we're here for.
sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of distinguishing this from being part of the Child Advocate's Office, I think we've already heard with testimony that was previous, and I'm hoping that you all had access to that testimony. We've come up a number of times, many of us that are parents who work jobs who have these kids with special needs, and we've provided a plethora of this evidence as to why this needs to be distinguished. So I'm hoping that you received that. I did send some of that to you. We have some 90 pages of a 700-person petition that was signed. There's one reason right there. This needs to be different. Many of us have had encounters working with some of these agencies, state agencies, who have no knowledge of things on the ground level. So you just heard a little bit from Senator or Representative Cordelli about that this is something at the district level. Okay, so there's a very intensive process that we go through as parents to understand what this process is, and that's part of what led us here. I would beg this committee to ask some of those specific questions. I'm in software engineering. I work with executives. I go into meetings all the time asking for funding. I would never dream of going in asking for funding without understanding anything about this process. So I would like to leave that with you all today. So first of all, knowledge is a problem area. Okay. Expertise, we've heard of that before from others. I beg to ask the question if this person even understands what proficiency scores are for special education in New Hampshire for our kids, 36,000 of them that have IEPs. These are regular kids, okay, non-IEPs. IEP children are in single digits.
Please, we're straying away from what we're after, okay?
All this plays into that.
Well, we all understand, well, most of us have a really good understanding of special ed and what the problems are.
Great.
Because that's one of the areas that we fund in the budget. So we have asked, I think, every question in the world. So
May I ask you a question? Have you attended an IEP meeting ever?
yes, as a matter
You
of
have?
fact, yes.
How many?
So we're,
One?
like I said, we're familiar with it. So
So it needs to be separate because we already have PIC. We already have the DRA. We already have all of these empires that have grown and mushroomed. And we got here today because we need something different, okay? Reason why I bring up software engineering is when we have a defect in that life cycle, we fix it early and often. We don't let it propagate. To just add on more bureaucracy is not going to fix that defect problem here. So we need to do something radically different. And when I testified last time to that House committee, I said, I would be, quite all right with hiring a consultant out of nowhere. Hire somebody that's going to do something radically different for this state. Because the situation we're finding ourselves in is we continue to mushroom. It's not going to matter if we're spending $500,000. We're going to be facing class action lawsuits against the state of New Hampshire from the parents and the concerned parties in the state who did do it in Texas, and they'll do it here too. So I would hope that that should be something we're paying attention to also. We need to do something radically different in this case. We need to test and learn and not do the same stuff all over again. That's my rationale for doing something different.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Just a moment. Someone may have a question. And thank you for
Sure.
keeping it focused. Representative Turcotte.
Madam Chair, so is it your position that you believe these two offices should be separate and not together? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Representative Bucco?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems like we're pretty deep into policy here. The only financing that I see in this bill is the 500,000 to establish the office. Am I off the
Only-
beaten path on that? Or
Only because the amendment that we will be looking at this afternoon removes the child advocate from, well, it sets up a separate office and removes the responsibility for education from the Office of Child Advocate. That's why it sounds like we're into a lot of policy issues. But that was
Well-
that was the reason why we ITL'd it in the first place.
and if I may follow up, how
sure.
did that come to us from the policy committee? Did they pass this?
It came to us from the policy committee as a separate organization.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you
Other
very
questions?
much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Would you like? Tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Darlene Gildersleeve. I am the parent of 2 children who have IEPs, who suffered tremendously under the school districts of Hopkinton, New Hampshire, and Hooksett, New Hampshire. One district was so horrific that
Okay.
I actually moved.
Please.
I'm just telling you.
I know we don't need your story. Okay, that's not our responsibility. That was your responsibility when you talked to the education committee.
Yep.
What we want to know is what your position is on which way to go.
Oh, absolutely. Just so you know, and for full disclosure, I'm a recent board member of the Disabilities Rights Center. I'm also extensively trained in special education law and a graduate of the UNH Institute on Disability Leadership Series, wraparound training for mental health, extensive state committees on the 10-year mental health plan, etc. I have been volunteering to help families for 10 years. And as such, I highly advocate for the Office of the Special Education Advocate to be separate. I myself have called with many other parents. I have called the former child advocate begging for help for my children, but also for children that I've helped in Rochester whose families are obligated to sign a non-disclosure agreement by the law firm of Drummond and Whitsom with their lobbyist Jerry Zellen, gagging parents under NDAs so that they can't share their story without threat of lawsuit. This is what's going on in education in New Hampshire. Our own taxpayer dollars. Hold on. Okay, I'll sink it down. Our own taxpayer dollars that we pay are then paid to these highly paid law firms, Wadley, Starr, and Peters, I think, and Drummond and Whitsom, to fight against our kids with disabilities.
So how does that affect who?
So this
Okay, whether
this
it's a
office
separate
must be
office
it
or
must
not.
be separate because many parents and myself have called the child advocate. They do zilch nothing with education, particularly nothing with special education.
Okay.
So it must be separate for any change to be done in New Hampshire. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
And again, I don't, I'm not cutting you off, but
Oh no,
but
I
I-
can take questions if
but
you.
I really want to focus on what our discussion is all about. Okay. Yes, you may.
May I ask a question? I appreciate, thank you very much for taking the question. And I appreciate, believe me, I appreciate your, it's obviously you're very frustrated and I can completely understand that. The thing I guess I'm a little bit concerned about is this, and both you and the prior witness testified about this. You've sort of said, given the picture that, the school districts are not sort of doing their job, they're not handling these things the way they should be. And I think your witness who testified before you said, and there's a whole lot of other people that have tried to get involved and they're not doing it either. I guess that what the question that raises to me is, how do we know that this, we're going to form a new sort of inspector general, for lack of a better term, for special education? How do we know they're going to do their job either? If all these other places aren't doing their job, who are, state or local officials that are, presumably well-intentioned, how do we know that this agency is going to be the magic one that will do the job?
Greg, thank you for your question. Because firstly, families and the students are going to come first. For the first time in education history of New Hampshire, the lobbyists, the unions, these hardly paid law firms, they're not going to have any influence. The families and the children are actually going to say, these are the problems that we're having to the advocate. They're actually going to do data tracking to say, okay, Darlene Gildersleeve from Hopkinton, New Hampshire, had 2 different children that were denied educational evaluations. She had 2 different children that were denied their fair and appropriate public education, which is also known as FAPE, under the federal law. They're also going to be told that, we have another bill right now, SB 394 and HB 1513, that Darlene Gildersleeve's son was kicked out of school and kicked off his IEP when he was 21, so he couldn't graduate high school. And the mom I had to go and beg a charter school to take him. So the differences with this advocate is families and children are actually going to be heard and listened to and put first. That's going to be the fine difference. And keeping the office separate is the key, because that's how we guarantee that children and families come first.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, you may.
So in the example you gave, when you say that the Office of Child Advocate is going to be for special education is going to receive the complaint. Isn't it the situation that they're going to get the complaint and they're going to say, Mr. X or Ms. X has complained that their child was, for lack of a better term, not properly treated in some respect. Aren't they going to also call the other side? Aren't they going to call the school and say, well, wait a minute, that's what this person claims. Is that true or not?
There's actually going to be proof. The family keeps their own records. There, like Senator Regan said, files of exactly what happened, files and files and files, binders and binders of complaints. Then we get trends, we get data tracking, and then this child advocate of special ed will work collaboratively with Commissioner Edelblue and the governor, and not try to write reports attacking them, but say, listen, we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, and these are the solutions, and listen to the families and the children who are experts in our children, with our medical professionals and our reports and our records and all of our experience. Then we could say, this is the real story. We're not going to let the lobbyists speak for the school districts anymore at $300 to $500 an hour. The parents and the families are going to be heard.
We're straying. Okay. Did you have a follow-up?
No, but
Okay.
maybe I think Representative Edwards.
Yep, let me get Representative Edwards a turn. Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Okay, no problem. Representative Edwards, like everyone else,
Yes, ma'am.
we are,
I heard.
we,
I will comply.
okay, and if you don't, you know that I will tell you that.
Yes, ma'am. I'm looking forward to avoiding that.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm Representative Jess Edwards, Auburn, Chester, and Sandown, also a member of the Finance Committee. I wasn't part of this bill until very recently. I got involved because I had a large number of people contacting me. My background includes being a manpower officer in the Army, in which I did manpower analysis and organizational redesign and design on a number of occasions. So just to address your question, should this office be co-located within the existing office, or should it become a separate independent office? The kind of factors that you would look at in order to help make that decision would be, is the mission aligned, or the 2 missions aligned well enough to where the central leadership of that organization would be able to parse out what kind of support is needed for each of the missions. That's one aspect. Is it a case where there may be sort of a natural motivation to focus on one side of the mission at the detriment of the other. And if that exists, by paying short shrift to the other side of the mission, does that do some substantial harm? And then there's just another issue of just workload. I mean, if we didn't have to worry about specializations of missions, prioritization of organizations, and workload, the entire federal government would be one department. You know, but because we care about these things, we tend to segregate and segment. Listening to the arguments from the representatives and senators that looked at this, I think they came to the conclusion that just as a matter of policy, there is good cause to establish this office in a separate and distinct way. To Representative Lynn's question about, well, if we create a new office, will they be as feckless as we perceive the others to have been? And I would say that we need to keep distinct the difference between an organizational design and the personnel that are used to staff it. I once had a senior boss basically just rip up my plan for a reorganization because he said this is all about people. If you don't have the right people in the right spot, it doesn't matter what kind of design you have. So as important as that is, it's a distinct thing from how you design it to begin with. So it sounds like it should become a separate office, and that it should be the new hire should be really good. So those are my comments or observations.
Are there any questions for Representative Edwards? Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking the question. So I understood everything you said. Is it your position that you believe that the offices should be separate?
Representative Turcotte, I tend to have an opinion on everything. I try to highlight the ones that I really think I've done my homework on and really have reached a conclusion. This one I'm sort of still gelling. I think I'm 80% confident that keeping them separate or establishing an independent office to Advocacy for Education, that is probably a good idea. But I can't swear it to you.
So am I hearing you right that although you're straddling the fence a little bit, most of your body's on one side of it, on the leaning towards segregating the? I'm just trying to get it clear. Is that what we're-
Yes, sir. 80% of my body is on one side of the fence, and that's a lot of body. So.
Okay, thank you. Unless there were other questions? No? Okay. All right. Anyone else? Should we bring the microphone to you, or are you okay? I don't blame you. Okay, I think he turned the microphone off, so just press the little squiggly button there.
You. Hi, my name is Jennifer Pike from New London, and I have a 17-year-old son with autism. And I'm not going to tell my story.
Thank you.
But I would like to talk a little bit about the requirements for this office, the office. for
No.
this- Well, no, well, or
What you
as
need to,
far as
what you need to
as
talk
far as
about
why
is
they would-
why.
as
That's
far as
correct.
why the offices should be separate.
Thank you.
Because it goes beyond just the need for special ed law experience. Not only do they need special ed law experience, it's a very unique position. They need special education experience. They need to know about disability, the disability world. They need to know the entire IEP process. They need to understand, the IEP process in itself is an entirely different language. I do have printouts for you that includes all of the acronyms for special ed, which I think that it's 11 pages, I think, long. So I just thought it would give you an idea of, it takes a long time to learn that language. So when you're a new parent going into that world, it's quite overwhelming, and you really don't know. The school district has power over you because you really don't know what people are saying to you.
So
And
if,
so when I know, sorry, but when I hear that Ms. Sanchez doesn't have any experience in special ed, that's very concerning because, obviously she would be overseeing the person in her office, and, it would be very concerning. This person would also need to have, experience with medical diagnoses because they would be overseeing and reading reports. They need to understand assessments.
so what you're saying is that if I could just kind of get us back, is that you believe that the person that the governor selects with all of these criteria would be better off in their own office.
I do.
Okay.
I think that it is just an enormous position in itself. The other concern that I have is that Ms. Sanchez testified last week that if there were problems to arise, that she would go to the Department of Ed and to pick. And the whole point was to flush out problems and, independent of those entities. So, we were trying to be independent of that. So that's
Okay, thank you.
done.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. And I'm going to, Mickey has provided, with the, not yet, with the amendment. And, I think that, I'd like to recess until like 1 o'clock or a little after to give us an opportunity to digest all of this, and we'll come back at that time and make a decision. Yes, Ms. Sanchez.
I'm wondering if I can respond. Unfortunately, I'm not available to come back at 1 o'clock as much as I would love to be able to be back here.
Okay.
But there are a couple of notes.
Sure.
that I would like to be able to respond.
Please come up.
Thank you. So just a couple of points to clarify and notes that I took from those that spoke after me. I would like to note that we do currently have staff in the office that track data and trends for our office for whatever we are looking for data trends at that point. So do we have the capacity in the office already to track data trends in education? If we are getting complaints in regards to education, yes, we do. We're not getting complaints with education right now because we're not known, as I had noted earlier. But if we were known and understood to families that we also worked in that capacity, I do feel that we have the capacity in the office to track those trends. And the specialists that we would be looking for would be then to take a look at those trends and see what recommendations would be made from that. Also, I would like to note that I have I'm hearing that there are parents in the room who have children with autism spectrum diagnosis. That falls under children's behavioral health. We already work in the scope of children's behavioral health. We work very closely with that. And again, like I said, when we're looking at the holistic view of the child, education is one piece of that. And of course, special education is extremely important, and access to services for children with autism spectrum disorder, services in school are extremely important. And we understand that in the office. So having that specialist to work on that, the special education aspect, would only enhance what we are already doing on the child behavioral health side in regards to those diagnoses. And then I would like to just note for the room that I by no means would call myself a specialist in special education. I take nothing away from these families who work very, very hard to get their children to where they are. Have I been able to experience special education in the state of Massachusetts, where I come from? Yes, I have. I've interacted with that system quite a bit. I've seen some great things that the system's doing. I have seen some flaws in that system as well. And my hope would be, with bringing the specialist in the office, would possibly be able to bring some of my experience from a state that is doing some things well in special education and advocate for that here in the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you. I'm sorry you won't be able to come back.
I'm sorry as well.
That's fine. We all have obligations. So, let's make it 1:15. Okay. So we'll see you then. And, we're not going to take any more comments. We're just going to go with the, what we're going to do with the amendment and the bill. I'll call the meeting to order. So did we get the new amendment?
The one handed out earlier, I'm not aware of a new one.
Okay. I know, but there's an error in this one. Yes.
Talked to Senator Reagan downstairs. He asked me to relay, he's got some other meeting right now, but that the amendment is okay. What he thought was missing is in the bill, so everything
Oh,
is good.
okay. So this is fine.
This is fine.
Okay. Thank you.
It's possible, just piecing this together, I know there was a conversation about the governor appointing. That's already in the
That's in
underlying
the bill,
which is
yeah.
why it wasn't in the amendment, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, when he told me that, I thought, okay. All right. So as long as this one's fine. Okay. Could I have a motion on amendment 2022-1857? Thank you. Ought to pass. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Hang on 1 second.
Nope, we're doing the amendment. We're just
doing
going to
the
raise our
sorry.
hands.
Yep, all right. Sorry about that.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now I will take an OTP
57.
A on 381 if I can find it. Maybe it's right here and I just don't see it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, OTPA. Thank you. Do I have a second? All right, is there any discussion? Let me just say this, okay? Obviously, I'm going to vote OTPA, okay? That's neither here nor there. But I do think that the Education Committee needs to relook at this in a couple of years to see how effective this organization is. To, because it is standalone, it's going to take some time for the governor to appoint somebody. This lady here seemed really efficient and knew exactly what needed to be done, but I'm not sure whether the governor will appoint her. But, I do think that it's essential that whatever services we provide for children are comprehensive. And that we need to be sure that that's what they're getting. Yeah, right. Yeah, well, yes, in accordance with the laws. Yes, go ahead, please.
Again, just, I concur. There are two distinct populations. I think that ideally looking at a comprehensive advocacy program is probably a good idea down the road, but it seems like there's need for this now. I think there's probably going to be hiccups in trying to figure out who and how this is going to work out. But I certainly support the attempt to try it and appreciate that there are two populations that need to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready? Oh, go ahead.
May I just make a comment? I'm obviously going to vote in favor of this also. And I guess what I just say is I completely agree that it makes, because of the differences on the type of work that they're doing, that it makes sense that there's a good argument for not having them housed in the same office, so to speak, even though maybe from a managerial standpoint, that might be somewhat less efficient. The real concern I have with this, but I'm willing to let's give it a try and see how it goes. I think it's the the analysis is still out, in my view, even on the Office of Child Advocate, is whether these things really work. Whether, because the theory of all of this stuff seems to be, well, the school districts aren't really doing their job with special education, or the DHHS isn't really doing its job with providing appropriate services to children, and therefore you need another agency to sort of be looking at them. I'm skeptical about. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to say by any stretch that there aren't mistakes made in both schools and in the DHHS, but that there's sort of a systematic problem. I am skeptical about that, and whether or not this will actually, whether there is, number one, and number two, if there is, that this will solve it. And what I'm worried about is that in 4 or 5 years, there'll be a move for another agency to look over this agency. But anyway, having said that, I'm voting for it.
Representative Heath, we all agree with each other at times. Okay.
All right, I'm going to
Will
call
the
the roll.
clerk call the roll,
Yes,
please?
please. Representative Petrie.
Yes.
Representative Lynn votes yes. Representative Turcotte.
Yes.
Representative Bucco.
Yes.
Representative Heath. Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Umberg.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 7-0 in the affirmative.
Okay, the vote is 7-0 in the affirmative. So, Joe, you're writing the, okay. All right. 401, we passed earlier today, with, Representative Turcotte and Representative Lynn not here, but basically it was simply, a redo of all the things that we talked about yesterday, so, yes.
You put it all like in one amendment.
Yes, we put it all in
Yeah,
one
yeah,
amendment, so,
Sure.
all right. I will write the blurb on that one. Unless somebody else wants to jump up and do it. Okay, SB 420. Oh, okay. The Extraordinary Needs Grant. Did you say you were going to do that one? Yeah. Oh, wait a second. I think I did that. Okay. Yeah, did you send them to Janet as well? Okay. All right,
I did, but wait, I did it too. I just sent it directly to Janet. Did you want?
that's
a copy
fine.
of it?
No,
Okay.
no. What did you do?
I did 346, and I did the minority report.
Oh, okay, so you did
I did
346.
346. Yeah. I
Okay.
sent it to Janet last night.
Okay,
Still owe you on 442.
right, right. So, here's kind of my plan for, as we know, if we wait at the executive session, if we wait until we get through all the bills, then it's going to be 6 o'clock. And then Janet has 2 hours worth of work. So what I'm planning to do is after each division completes their bills, I'm going to take a 10-minute recess, which will then allow Janet to forward those to the clerk. Okay, so that the last one will be Division 3. And I know that obviously I have a blurb to write, and Representative Petrie's finishing his new one up, and Representative Turcotte has his to do. So I think that covers all of them. Okay. Is there anything else? Mickey, do you have anything for us?
No, I think we're good.
You think we're good?
I think we're good.
Okay, 1:30. We did well. Okay. We'll see you, some of you at 2:15 and some of you at 3 and yeah. Yeah. No, that's not for you, Tom. Unless you want to become a Republican. I just asked. That's the other option. Come on. Then you can join our caucus. So, oh, I guess I better close this mess. Okay. Thank you all. No. No, I just closed it. Okay, so let me go write my blurb. 401.
You or Janet?
Send it to Janet. It's okay. It's probably right in here. Don't, your caucus is probably here. Oh, good idea.